Hello and welcome back to this AWS course. In fact, welcome to the start of section 5, where we're going to start working with Cognito. In this lesson, we're just going to clone the section repo, build the software, and have a look at a working implementation of Cognito and see it up and running in action. Once we've done that, in the next and subsequent lessons, we'll take a look at the source code and see how it's actually implemented. But if you'd like to follow along, just go to richerbraycourses.co.uk, click on this repo link for section 5, and you'll find the code here. So this is lesson 1. Just grab hold of what's in here. And in fact, I'm going to clone the repo myself now, so I'll grab hold of the URL, put this away, open VS Code, and do git clone. I'm just going to put this in my source folder. And to build it, all I need to do is open a terminal in the monorepo folder and do pnpm install. And then if we look in package.json, you'll see there's a script for deploying everything here. And I have an alias set up for pnpm -- silent run. So I'll just type prun deploy everything. And that'll go off and build all the stacks and deploy the website into the website bucket. And I will come back to you as soon as it's complete. Okay, so that's now completed building. I thought I'd quickly show you a very simplified diagram of what we've actually built. So let me just put this into Zen mode and view mode to make it a bit clearer. There we are. So we've seen most of this in previous lessons. In fact, sort of everything below this, where the hand is waving here, we looked at in section 4. And I've added to this diagram this Cognito stuff up here. Now, we will see as we progress through this section that this is vastly simplified, but just to give you a sort of mental model of roughly what's going on, just as a starting point, what's going to happen is in our UI, we're going to click on a menu item and it will load this Cognito login page. So literally the browser will dump this entire React application and it'll go off to Amazon's Cognito web server, and it will load a brand new web page, this login page. And the login page will be identified as our specific Cognito implementation. And the user will be expected to enter their username and password, or they can actually use this screen to register a new account, which will be stored in the AWS account database for us. And once they've successfully entered their username and password, then this website will redirect our application back to our CloudFront website. So it'll come back and say, please load a web page from here. And the web page will typically be /callback or something like it. But afterwards, the redirect website address will also contain this question mark code equals XXX. So it's not just supplying the page to redirect to, but crucially, in the address, it's also supplying this code that's been allocated, and it's our sort of key to continue talking to Cognito. So the UI will load this callback page, and it'll inspect the redirection address, and it'll discover this code in the website address, and it'll grab hold of it. And then it will go off to Cognito a second time with this code. But whereas here it was opening a web page and jettisoning the original React application, here it's making an API call. Just like when we make a call to the API server over here, it's going to use the JavaScript fetch call. And it supplies this code XXX. Now there's all sorts of packaging up on how this code is actually sent that we'll look at, but essentially it is sending the code to the Amazon Cognito API server. The authorization server will look this code up and say, yes, this code makes sense to me. And it'll return back some data, which is essentially a couple of JavaScript objects, but packaged up into a format known as a JWT token. But essentially, these can be unpacked into JavaScript JSON objects. And we'll see that the data received back is an ID token that says who the user is, so we can inspect that and get the user's email address. And it'll also contain an access token, another object, which contains a list of scopes, which are essentially a list of permissions the user has to access resources. And so at that point, what we're actually going to do is store the ID token data into the web browser local storage, so that we can literally close the web browser, reopen it, and reload the email address from the local store. So that's a very high level view of what's going on. So having talked you through all of that, let's have a brief look at the application running. So to do that, let's go back to Visual Studio Code. If I scroll up to the very top where we see the website was deployed, I can follow this link and open it. And this is the website that's been deployed to CloudFront. And all the usual pages are here. And at the moment, if we go to the profile page, it says logged out. But I can go to the Cognito login web page by clicking over here and selecting login. And if you watch the address in the address bar, you can see that we've now left our website. We've loaded instead the amazoncognito.com login page. This monorepo 418 blah blah identifies us. Because this is a newly created Cognito resource in AWS, there are no user accounts set up. So the first thing I need to do is go and create one. So I'll just click on create account here, and I'll put one in, rt.uptick@gmail.com, and sign up. So an email is going to be sent, and I'll just go and get the code. Okay, here it is. And we can see we've now been redirected back to our own website. So what happened here was we entered the registration details. We were redirected back to our UI. It then very quickly went off to Cognito and did this exchange of a code for tokens. It stored the tokens in the browser storage, and then it actually redirected back to our profile page. This is just some code that I put in to redirect from callback to profile, and we can see it now says logged in. And indeed, if I look in the browser storage, we can see that there is a Cognito access token and a Cognito ID token. So with these in place, I can now exit this page. In fact, I can exit Chrome, and then I can reopen that web page. Just click on this link in VS Code. And we can see if we go to the profile page, we're still logged in. And I've also built in functionality where we can log out as well, which we will look at as we go through the code. So the last thing I wanted to show you is just the actual Cognito resource. If we go to the management console and visit Cognito up here. So when we ran deploy everything, it essentially created what's called a user pool. And you can think of a user pool as essentially a database of users. We've just registered our first one. And if you click on users here, you can see this is rt.uptick. And clearly all of these users and their passwords is being managed remotely in the cloud by AWS for us. But we can come in here and we can do very basic operations. I can select this user and go through actions. I can sign them out, disable them, reset their password, and a few other bits and pieces. Although clearly normally this would be built into management screens in our own application, but there's a sort of fallback if you need it here. So with that, I will bring this lesson to a close, and then in the next lesson, we'll start looking at everything in more detail. So I'll see you there.